One of the sick men told him that his name was Sazikov Ivan Alexandrovich. Father side note, remember this name, he'll come up later on. End of aside. Father Arseny prayed quietly while he was helping him. Sazikov noticed it and mumbled, "You're praying, eh, priest? You pray to get forgiveness for your sins, and this is why you help us. You're afraid of God. Why's that? Have you ever seen him?" Father Arseny looked at Sazikov with surprise. "How could I not have seen him? He is here among us and unites you and me." "What are you saying, Pop? God is in this barracks?" he laughed. Father Arseny looked at him and said quietly, "Yes, I see his presence. I see that your soul is black with sin, but there is room in it for light. Light will come to you, Sazikov, light, and your saint, Saint Seraphim of Sarov, will not abandon you." Sazikov's face distorted. He trembled and whispered with hatred, "I'll kill you, you silly priest, I'll kill you. I don't know how you know things. I hate the way you think." Father Arseny turned around and walked away, repeating, "Have mercy on me, a sinner." While he was doing this, he prayed the Akathist, his rule of prayer, Vespers, Matins, and all the other prayers a priest must say. The second patient was one who was in the camp for a simple reason. He had to be removed from his position of authority so that someone else could take his place. His story was the same as that of so many. He had been part of the October Revolution in 1917. He had known Lenin. He had commanded a brigade in 1920 and had helped, but had an important position. He had commanded a brigade in 1920. He had an important position in the secret police. He had worked for the NKVD. And now he had been sent to die in a special death camp. Some men were killed for the things they had said, others for their faith. And then there were those like the second sick man, a communist idealist who had happened to get in someone's way and was therefore put away. All of them, sooner or later, were to die in this camp. One of those removed from power was Alexander Pavlovich Avsenkov. Aside, remember this name, he'll come up in future. End of aside. As soon as he had heard this name, Father Arseny remembered him. Avsenkov had often appeared in the newspapers, and he was the one who had signed Father Arseny's sentence. This was when Father Arseny had been sentenced to be shot for anti-revolutionary activity. Later, his punishment had been commuted to 15 years in camp. Father Arseny remembered the name well. Avsenkov was middle-aged. He looked 40 or 50, but life in camp had left a heavy imprint on him. Hunger, exhausting work, beatings, all these paled next to the awareness that only months ago he had sent others here, believing each time that he was ridding the state of the enemy of the people. His stay in the camp had made him realize the enormity of his mistake. He realized that he had sent tens, hundreds of thousands of innocent people to their death. From his high position, he had lost touch with the truth. He believed interrogation reports and the flattery of his subordinates. Listening to absurd government orders, he had lost contact with living human beings and life itself. He suffered constantly, but could change nothing about what he had done. His feelings of spiritual emptiness and loss tore him apart. He was quiet, kind, and shared all he owned. He was afraid neither of the administration nor of the criminals. He was frightened when he was angry, but did not lose his head. He tried to protect the innocent, and for this he often had to spend time in the punishment cell. Avsenkov was attached to Father Arseny. He loved him for his generosity of heart and his warmth. He often told him, "You have a soul, Father Arseny." Within the barracks, most people did call him Father Arseny. "You have a soul, I can see that, but I am a true communist. While you serve your God, you're a priest. We have different points of view. In theory, I should be fighting ideologically with you." Father Arseny just smiled and said, "Hey, dear friend, why would you want to fight? You fought as much as you could, and where did your ideology get you? It took you to this camp which swallowed you. As far as I'm concerned, I had my faith in Christ out there in freedom, and I have it here within myself. God is the same everywhere and helps everyone. I trust and believe that he will help you too." And once Father Arseny said, "We have known each other for a long time. God brought us together a long time ago and planned our meeting in this camp. What are you saying? How could I have known you?" "Oh yes, you know me, Alexander Pavlovich. In 1933, when communism was trying to eradicate religion, hundreds of thousands of believers were exiled. Hundreds of churches were closed, and this is when, for the first time, I was sent away to camp on your instructions. In 1939, I was in your jurisdiction again. I wrote an article. As soon as it was published, you arrested me again and convicted me to be shot. But thank you, you commuted the sentence to exile in camp. Since then, I have been living in various camps, and all along I have been expecting to see you, so finally we meet. Please don't think that I'm trying to accuse you. All this is the will of God, and my own life is just a drop in the ocean. Of course you cannot remember me. Among the tens of thousands you saw, how could you remember me? God alone knows everyone and everything. The fate of people is in his hands." The silly priest. Depending on the nature of the most recent waves of arrests, different people would arrive at this camp: engineers, soldiers, clerics, scientists, artists, farmers, writers, agronomists, doctors, and then subgroupings of prisoners with similar interests would form naturally. Everyone was downtrodden and exhausted, but you could see that no one wanted to forget his past, his profession. Debate between groups was very heated. People would become impassioned and see only their own side on an issue and argue as if their lives depended on it. Father Arseny took part in none of these discussions. He aligned himself with no group, nor did he attempt to defend a viewpoint. Whenever a discussion began, Father Arseny would simply go to rest and pray on his bunk. The intellectuals in the barracks looked down their nose at Father Arseny. Just a silly priest, uneducated. He's good-hearted, helpful, but uncultured. That's why he believes in God. He has nothing else to live by. This was the opinion of the majority of the prisoners. Often, after roll call was taken and the barracks were locked for the night, a group of 10 or 12 writers, art historians, and artists would gather together. The discussion was always heated. This time the topic was ancient Russian art and architecture. One of the prisoners, a tall man who had kept his elegance and poise even in camp, spoke with great assurance on this topic. People around him listened with great interest. This tall and impressive man was surprisingly knowledgeable and very sure of himself. He spoke very convincingly. As he was talking, Father Arseny happened to pass by. The speaker, who was in fact a professor of art history, spoke to Father Arseny condescendingly. "Tell us, dear Father, you are very pious and of the clergy. Perhaps you could tell us how you understand the influence of Orthodoxy on ancient Russian art and architecture. Do you think there is such an influence?" He spoke and smiled. The people around him laughed. Arseny, who was seated nearby, also smiled. Such a question addressed to Father Arseny seemed absurd. Some felt sorry for him. Others wanted to have a laugh. Everybody understood that a simple priest like Father Arseny could not answer such a philosophical question. Since he didn't know anything, the question was intended to demean him. Father Arseny was just passing by, but he stopped, listened to the question, noticed the grinning faces, and answered, "I will answer as soon as I finish my work," and kept going. "He's no fool. He avoided being put on the spot," someone murmured. "Yes, the Russian clergy was always uncultured," echoed another. 10 minutes later, Father Arseny returned to the group that was talking and, interrupting the speaker, said, "I finished my work. Can you please repeat your question?" The professor looked at Father Arseny the way he would look at a stupid student and slowly said, "The question, Father, is a simple one, but interesting. How do you, a member of the Russian clergy, understand the influence of Orthodoxy on ancient Russian fine art and architecture? You may have heard about the art treasures in Suzdal, Rostov, Pereslavl, and the Veropontovo monastery. You may have seen reproductions of the icon of the Mother of God of Vladimir and of the Trinity by Rublev. So please explain to us, what connection do you see? The question was that of a professor. Everyone understood this and thought that he should not have asked it of the simple but good little priest. It was clear they thought that he could not answer. You could see it just by looking at his face. Father Arseny stood straighter. His appearance changed somehow. He looked at the professor and said, "There are many different theories about the connection between orthodoxy and fine art. Many people have written about this, including you, Professor. You have spoken and written much about it. However, I feel that a great many of your theories and statements are convoluted, incorrect, and contrived simply to satisfy your readers or the censors. What you are saying just now is much closer to the truth than what you said in your books. You believe that Russian fine art grew out of a secular base. You deny almost completely the influence of orthodoxy. You write that it is only economic and social factors, not the spiritual basis of the Russian people and the beneficial influence of Christianity, which influence art and architecture. My opinion is the opposite of yours. I consider that orthodoxy was the decisive influence of Russian culture from the 10th to the 18th century. In the 10th century, the Russian clergy found and accepted the culture of Byzantium and brought it home to influence all of Russia. They brought books, icons, models of Greek churches and hagiography to the Russian people. This was the influence that built Russian culture. You mentioned the icon of the Mother of God of Vladimir. Didn't this icon, like many other early icons, come to us from Orthodox Byzantium? And weren't these icons the foundation of which later Russian iconography and art flourished? Every Russian icon is inextricably connected to the soul of the Christian iconographer, of the believer, who comes to the icon as a spiritual, symbolic representation of Christ, his mother, or his saints. The Russian people do not approach icons as idols, but as the spiritual image of the one to whom his soul addresses itself in sorrowful or joyous prayer. The Russian iconographer creates his icons with prayer and fasting, and it is understandable that it is said that the hand of the iconographer is held by an angel of God. The Russian iconographer never signs his work because he considers that it is not his hand, but his soul that has created the icon with the blessing of God, while you seem to see only socio-economic factors. Look at a Western Madonna and at an ancient Russian icon. You will see the difference. In our icons, you can feel the spirit of faith, the imprint of orthodoxy. On Western paintings, you see a lady, a woman. Spiritual, yes, but full of earthly beauty. You do not feel the power of God's grace. It is only a woman. But look at the Mother of God of Vladimir, look at her eyes, and you will read such strength of spirit, such faith in God's mercy, and such hope for salvation. Father Arseny spoke clearly and expressively. Even his physical demeanor had changed. He spoke about well-known icons and explained each of them, thus revealing the soul of ancient Russian iconography. He then began speaking about architecture, giving examples such as those in Suzdal, Vladimir, and Moscow, and showed its connection with orthodoxy. Father Arseny finished his answer this way. In building churches, Russians made the stones sing the glory of God. They made the stones teach about God and glorify God. Father Arseny spoke for about an hour and a half, and the people around him listened in dead silence. The professor had lost his half-mocking smile and looked as if he had shrunk. "Excuse me," he asked, "how do you know all of this? You know fine arts, architecture, and even my own books. Where did you study? I thought you were a priest." One has to love and know his fatherland. It is essential that even the silly priests, as you call them, understand the soul of Russian art, and being shepherds of souls, they must show their flock the truth as it is in reality. Because people like yourself, Professor, cover in mind-twisting theories and lies that which is most holy and precious in man. This distortion is created for one's personal benefit and to cater to current political leanings and directives. The professor changed his tack altogether and asked, "Who are you? What is your last name?" In the world, I was Pyotr Andreevich Streltsov. Now I am Father Arseny, a prisoner like yourself in this special camp. Startled, the professor spoke with difficulty. Pyotr Andreevich, I apologize, forgive me. I could never imagine that I was speaking to a famous art historian, author of many books and articles, teacher of many, a famous professor, now a priest, and asking him such a stupid question. For a number of years no one had heard from you, nobody knew where you were, only your books and your articles continued expressing your thoughts. How was it that you, such a famous expert, became a priest? I became the priest Arseny because I see and I feel the presence of God in everything. Having become Father Arseny, understood as never before that a simple priest must know a great deal. And while we are on the subject of simple priests, you of all people know that they were the power that made Russia what it was in the 14th and 15th centuries and helped the Russian people overthrow the Tatars. It is unfortunately true that in the 16th and 17th century morality was at a low among the Russian priesthood, and only a few rare lights lit up the horizon of the Russian church. Until then, the priesthood had been the dynamic force of our country. With that, Father Arseny left, and all those who had heard him, among them Avsenkov, stood silently in awe and amazement. Well, there we have it, my friend, someone said. That was our simpleton priest. Each went to his bunk in silence. Avsenkov noticed that from this time on, the intellectuals in the barracks looked at Father Arseny differently. It seemed for many the concepts of God, science, and intelligentsia were becoming more closely related. Avsenkov had been a convinced communist who had believed almost fanatically in Marxist ideology. During his first year in the camp, he had lived as a loner. Then he started talking to some of the other prisoners and realized that most of his old friends, also communists, now hoped only for a return to the old days when their life was comfortable. They did not care to do battle with the unjust rule of Stalin. Avsenkov disliked these attitudes and stopped talking to them. He looked back at his own life and understood that he had in fact lost all his idealism a long time before. These ideas had been replaced by parroting formulaic truths and obeying orders. He had lost contact with humanity. Lectures and newspaper articles had replaced living human beings. In his contact with other prisoners, Avsenkov saw authentic, unartificial life. He was attracted to Father Arseny with his rare attitude towards others and his constant readiness to help everyone with true kindness. Father Arseny's intellectual qualities won him over completely. His limitless faith in God and his unceasing prayer had at first alienated Avsenkov, but at the same time had strangely attracted him. He always felt good when he was with Father Arseny. All the difficulties, the sadness, the oppressive atmosphere of this camp became bearable in his presence. Why? He could not understand. Ivan Alexandrovich Sazikov, one of the ill prisoners whom Father Arseny had cared for, had been, as they learned, an infamous criminal. He loved power. He was a hard man. He knew the community of camp criminals well and had soon subjugated them all to himself. They all obeyed him. His word was law. The prisoners were all afraid of him, but he did not like to mingle in the affairs of the barracks, preferring to stay apart. For a few months after Father Arseny had nursed him to health, Sazikov did not want to be near him and made believe that he did not even know him, but it so happened that Sazikov hurt his leg and had to lie on his bunk for 4 or 5 days. The wound became infected, gangrene set in, and he was afraid his leg would have to be amputated.